Alright, this is David Kim doing the final sprint report, the final video report for the project. So, I'll start by just doing a playthrough of the game and showing all its features. So, this is the tractor screen, and on the left I do have just the wave direction set up. Alright, there we go. So as I start the game, I'll raise the volume a bit. You can hear the sounds come out, the blasters shooting, and if you can see in the first wave, none of my critters are on except the centipedes, so I'll just kill them. There you go. You can start the next wave. And every wave, just on default, has a spider summon thing, a spider thing like that, a spider spawner. Just find a game, and depending on the range, there's a different point system, point gain. And as you can see, in the top, I did achieve the highest score because I think the highest score was set to 100 at the beginning of this on the text file. So now if I kill these mushrooms, it does update dynamically like that. So I'll kill this thing and go to the next wave. Let me just first kill this thing. Let's see, there we go. Alright, the next wave started. And if you can see wave 2, I actually set, let me lower the volume a bit. I set the scorpion to on, but the spawn time to 20 second thing. So it's going to spawn quite often, because it's a random value based on that. And let me kill this spider. There you go. And it did poison that mushroom. And the flea is spawned at 4, so now there were 3, so now there are actually 3 mushrooms. Oh my god. There are 3 mushrooms. So the flea should spawn soon. There you go. Flea did spawn. And yeah, and then let me just die. When you die, that happens, and then as you can see, the points also went up every 2 things. Let's die again. Lives go down. This time, nothing died. I didn't have any mushrooms to repair, so. And as you can see, when the centipede had hit the poison mushroom, it went straight down. Boom, that was the 3rd life. And I did obtain a high score, so I'll put something in. D. Okay, and the way the input is just up, down. Enter to go to the next one. If I press backspace, I can go change these stuff. If I go backspace, nothing happens. So go back to P. Let's make that a space, so just PA. So now I can see high score has updated, very top, 1177 PA space, and then now it's in a tractor mode again. And to show the 2-player mode, I press 2 instead of 1, and now, well actually, yes to all, because now the high score has updated. Let me actually change the lives to whoops, to 1 so that I can do this quicker. Alright, there we go. So 2. Now you can see I started with only 1 life for each character. Let me get a high score. As you can see, there's that little spider bug. I haven't had a chance to fix that. I'm not sure exactly what was happening. And I did achieve, if you look right here, the lowest high score is 50. So I did technically achieve a high score, even though it didn't update the highest one. So I am going to put. So this is the first player. So O and E is the first player, and then now the second player starts. And there we go. And then I'm going to kill myself. Boom. 922. That is definitely a high score as well. So this would be the second player. 2 T. W O 2, and you can see 2 and 1 have been updated, and as I exit, yes to all, and it did update this file as well. So that's the actual game. Each wave changes. There's the tractor mode. The critters behave as similarly as possible that I was able to do with the actual the Flash game. There's a first player mode, 2-player mode, the high score detects, there's a high score input, and everything returns back to the tractor mode when it's all done. There's one thing that's just that's definitely not there. That's the wave color changing. the color changing thing with the waves. That was gonna be the last thing I implement. I was just gonna create. I was gonna. The plan was to make a like a texture manager. They utilize like a flyweight, and uses this the sprites PNG. Since it uses flyweight, it can just change the positions of which one to use, and it'll interact with the wave manager and stuff. But yeah, I got to a place where my code, where I was happy with my game today. So obviously, I can't. I just don't have the confidence to do that. So that was something I unfortunately couldn't implement. Now, where did we go? All right. So I guess go straight into like the specifics. In terms of what we had to actually do, first of all, would be I guess the best way to go from here is just to talk about the game architecture, the how the game works. So I go directly into that. My game only uses one scene. That's a game level. I'm sure other people have different ways, but I ended up just doing this. I have one scene and I have a game controller, and that's where everything happens. And so from here, I just call it begin, and here is the game controller. Now I know you said not to read line by line, but I will kind of be doing that. But each line in this class is all like function calls, so it's not. I don't think it's too much of a big deal. So in begin, all this stuff right here, if you read each comment, it tells you what it's actually doing and the specifics of what's happening. Basically, turning the sound off, filling the waves, and by fill the wave, this is where it parses through the wave directions. The wave manager parses that, and it creates multiple waves with spawners. Multiple waves with spawners. If you like fill waves right here, array index, and each wave is an object with with each wave having a different spawner depending on the instructions of the wave directions. Either way, well, that happens. Yeah, and it sets up the HUD, and the very final step is run the wave. So now, at the end of all this, it is just a tractor mode. It moves around, and within like the HUD setup, it imposes those characters onto the shroom field itself. And something that I should mention before going any further. Oh, geez, what did I do? All right. Before going any further, is to say that the way that my players work is there's always going to be an attractor player, a first player, and a second player. Yep, player 1, player 2, and an attractor. And when attractor mode is first done, it creates an attractor, and each player has their own mushroom field. And they have a pointer to the game gun. My game has a single game gun or blaster throughout for its whole lifetime. So basically, at begin I create it, and then I just keep passing it along using set player's active function on the player, depending on who is the player that's running right now, be it the first player, second player, or the attractor. That way, I just thought that makes sense considering. The gun doesn't ever really change. Its behavior changes with the attractor, but that was easily implemented using a strategy pattern, which I actually went over on a previous sprint. So that's that. And basically, in the attractor, and I explained it earlier in a sprint, but with the attractor pattern. In attractor mode, it is a game object, so I am able to take in inputs. Press 1, it calls the game controllers new game 1, and the game controllers new game 2 if you press 2. Now, going back to the actual architecture of the game, I think that would be the right term to use. But everything runs on kind of like an observer slash. It's not exactly an observer or listener pattern, but everything runs as a callback back to the game controller. So yeah, So as in like after this is done, the control of the game is technically in attractor mode, and the user interacts with the attractor mode, uh, the input thing. However, once they press one, it calls back to the game controller, and the game controller sets up the game, sets up the new game. So either way, going into new game, once again, I did comment everything out so you can look at that individually. It's most of it's pretty self-explanatory. The only thing to note is, depending on the number of player, it creates a new player. As in, it just creates a new thing every time, and it kills all players but prior to doing that. So if a player existed already, it's gonna deallocate that player. That player's gonna be gone. This has some. It doesn't cause any problems for the actual game, but talking about optimization or efficiency, there's some problems, which I'll go into after I explain the game itself and my thoughts on it. Yeah. So this is you can just look at the comments. I don't have to go any further on that. I think. So after new game runs, new game is done. Now we're into that thing where you can move around and stuff. Now here, the game's control is not in the game controller anymore. Um, it happens when it calls back to here through player death or run next wave. Player next wave. Player next wave gets run when I have spawners, as I mentioned, the centipede spawner. When the centipede spawner sees, because the centipede spawner keeps track of every spawn centipede head, every spawn centipede head, so that I can freeze everything on screen and clear everything at once. That was the original intent of it, but because I do keep track of that, it's also just seemed like a natural place to put the callback for the next wave. So the centipedes, because the centipede spawner already knows when all the nodes are gone, might as well put it there. Well, at least that was my logic. And here is just increment the player's current wave, clear the whole board in case there are like other critters run about, and it'll run the next wave. It will run the current wave, which has been incremented. Now, the only besides that, the other time there would be a callback back to the game controller would be upon player death, and this is controlled. This happens in player. As you probably noticed by now, I have a player manager and there's a get current player, and that switches up depending on who is playing right now. Attractor, first player, second player. Yeah, that's actually pretty obvious, I guess. So, yeah, each player keeps track of the important things, obviously, like, as I said, just the player field. It's the number of lives, scores, current wave, and there's these bowls just that takes depending on its state. And of course, there's a decrement lives thing that happens whenever the gun dies. So that when the gun, because if you see right here, as I said, set player active, you give each player a gun. This actually what happens is the single game gun gets access to that current player. So in turn, it can call back to the player and say to decrement the lives. And that in turn, if depending on the state, it'll call player death with not game over or game over, which is an enum value I made in my game globals.h, which basically has, and the game globals.h holds all the functions and variables, constants that I thought I would need for a lot, at least more than 2 or 3 classes, which turned out to be true. Anyway, it'll call player death upon that. Alright, so player death, once again, you can just read through here, but the important part is that when player dies, the field needs to be repaired. Now, the way I did repair field is pretty much the way you explained it in class. As in, first, my shroom field keeps track of everything that's damaged through its register and deregister shrooms, which happens every time the shroom factory creates a mushroom and whatnot. And this is also where the wave manager it calls back to it pings the wave manager that a mushroom has been disappeared or has appeared, so that the flea spawner can do it. And this also only happens if if that register and deregister happens on the player field, just to make sure it doesn't call back every single time. But yeah, it sorts that damaged mushroom list such that if it gets iterated in order, it will be iterated in the order that the mushrooms have to be repaired, mirroring the actual game, as in those explosions. And it'll call repair shroom. Now, as you said, repair, we can't really use a loop, so we're gonna have to use a system with callbacks. So that's what I did. Repair shroom, it'll call its actual mushroom, and when the mushroom is repaired, it actually calls a critter explosion. A critter explosion, as in the explosion that happens when anything dies except a gun. However, it calls that, it makes that explosion with a flag that says that it's actually repairing a mushroom, and that in turn makes it so that it'll take the player manager's current player and calls the shrooms repair mushroom. So it actually just loops back to here. And that way we have that nice repairing, exploding, repairing, exploding, repairing, exploding thing happening. And once it's done, it does finish player death. And this thing is just a score manager because I think you only get points every 2 mushrooms. There's a count in the score manager that keeps track of that. And in the case that all the mushrooms are what do you call it? Repaired when the count is like 1, it just puts it back to 0. So once again, calling back to the game controller because now everything's fixed. Let's finish player death. Now, when player death originally happened, we had exactly what kind of game over it was, not game over or game over, and we're able to utilize it here. And this is something I'm actually quite happy about because my game control, the way my game controller works with it's all its callbacks, and because each function has like a very specific purpose, implementing 2-player mode was actually quite easy. In that all I had to do was just create a few ifs and make it call a specific function, and that was literally it. Yeah. And you can actually, if you just read through this, because of I explain what these functions are besides do high score, so you can just look at that and you'll know exactly what's happening. Switch players basically just takes the current player and switches it and hides that. It takes the current player, hides the field, switches off so that the current player is the other player, and then it sets it active with the gun set player active function that you've seen before. And every player, as you saw before, keeps track of its score, so it also knows if it has a high score or not. So if that is the case, when they're dead and it's game over, it'll call do high score, which is right here. And this now hands off control of the game to the attractor HUD. And in the attractor screen being the HUD that displays everything that's actually on the grid. So let me actually just go there. Attractor, show, attractor screen. Oh, well, oh, yeah. There we go. There we go. Yep. Alright. So yeah, it has all this stuff like bonus every 12,000, credits to, that kind of thing, and each has its own little boolean that if it's flagged true, it'll show all. It'll definitely show. Else, if it's false, it won't show. So basically, what that did is call player got high score. Now at this point, the player haven't switched yet. The game hasn't ended yet, so there's nothing happening on screen except this. And when this happens, if you can just look right here, over here is just the necessary initialization of variables to have that input screen. And this is showing, just making sure that this happens. Because as I said, everything's based off booleans in that respect. Now, because my attractor HUD is a game object, once again, it does have ability to have a key press function. And within the player got high score, I register inputs. So now you can actually use the arrows and stuff as you saw before to do this. And if you look at this, it's actually what you would expect: up and down. It changes stuff. Backspace goes backwards, forwards. And the important part though is over here. Once it reaches 3, it sets the what do you call it, the screen using those booleans to how it should be when a game is over, right here. Um, yep, and the important part is these two right here, the high score. Put in high score or high score manager. It's a callback to the high score manager, and this is just telling it that there was indeed a high score. So it'll go into the high score manager's list of those 8 names, and it will pop the very last one and input this player slash their score accordingly. And it also calls update high score in the attractor HUD itself, and that just makes it so that the little glyph lists are updated properly to the new high scores. Yeah, and then there's like the reverse impose HUD. In the player fields, I have an impose HUD type of thing. Basically, that gets called by attractor. It takes all the lists locations, and in those locations, it puts in a it puts in a charge room, which is a derived class of shroom, of mushroom, and really all it is just a mushroom that doesn't have anything. All it does is it has a hitbox, and yeah, that's really it, really. So like when a bullet hits it, it makes sure the bullet disappears, and if a centipede hits it, it just acts as if it's a mushroom. So yeah, and I'll go back here, and yep. And as you can see at the very bottom, it calls back to high score finished, back to the game controller. Now we're at the high score finished, and this you can just look at that and you'll see exactly what happens. End game is pretty much exactly very similar to begin, and that turns the sound off, and you can look at the steps to see exactly how I achieved the attractor mode once again. Now we're hitting on 22 minutes, so I'll try to end this right away. Just talking about stuff that I didn't get to do. The biggest glaring problems are lack of some factories where I should have done. So if you look at the way I implemented my centipede and my critters, they both utilize the strategy pattern to create behaviors, as in they'll go up, left, right, down. And this is really cool for the critters because now, since I've done that, I can pretty easily create a scorpion that goes diagonally or moves like the spider pretty easily. However, every time I create, so like a centipede head, every time it pushes the next move depending on what's happening, it creates a new behavior, as in it'll create a thing in memory. And it will just get deleted at the end of the last segment because there's no one to push it back to. And same idea for the critters. And in the case of critter, I'll just go look at like spider. Where's spider? Yeah, I'll look at the spider. And it's initialized. There's a loop that completely fills it with random movement, and each time it's randomly inputting a new object, a new behavior. Actually, now this is dandy and all; it works fine, as you can see. However, during my implementation of this, I completely neglected the idea that this is happening often. And so I didn't even think about creating a factory. It was only when I was going over all my code today to make sure there aren't magic numbers or anything that I realized that, yeah, these were definite instances of instance recycling that should have been used. It was just stuff that flew right over my head, especially because the strategy pattern for this were what's the word? Like secondary objectives of the sprints. And honestly, when I found out, I wasn't confident I'd be able to implement it fast enough. So I just didn't do that. And the other thing is possibly I would need because of the way I implemented players, as in it creates a new player every time. Now it does lead to some like a cleaner code, I think. Um, and like it fits my thought process very well. And once again, obviously it does work. However, this also means every time I make a new game, I'm deleting a player and creating a new player every single time, and twice that if I'm doing two-player mode. So in that case, a player factory would also be beneficial. However, I would think most people would have done it, and I should have done it in a way that I just reused the players and I just reset the scores and lives and whatnot, and I'll just change out the mushroom fields, as in delete that, and create new ones when a new game happens. I honestly have no idea why I didn't think of it that way, because I guess I was like, by the time I caught on to that, I was too far into this that I just can't, I didn't think I have enough time to fix it in that way. But yeah, I think that would have been the much better way to implement players. Um, yeah, I think that should do it in terms of the actual going over what's happening. As you can see, um, what do you call it? I did have singletons, and pretty much all my managers have some sort of singleton, especially meaning the ones that are used by the game controller are all singletons. Um, yeah, every single manager is a singleton because those are all the managers are used for some sort of callback. But the stuff they interact with, like the wave manager, it interacts with waves. Waves themselves are not singletons because there are multiple instances of them. Whatnot. I use a strategy pattern when it comes to the behaviors, the what do you call it, the gun input, and I've also utilized it for like the sound, the game sounds. Sorry about that. Factory patterns for every factory. Uh, and the observer pattern, as I said, my whole system is based on that. I'm not sure if it's exactly observer pattern, but that is what has happened. I'm just going through the coding elements that send the grading thing. The centipede, as you saw, there's a centipede node base class where which the segment and the head is what do you call it? Is derived off of the mushroom field. The shroom field has all the has a 2D array of shroom pointers, along with like a list of damaged shrooms. The damaged shroom locations is a vector because I just wanted to have something that can constantly what do you call it? As a vector because I want to be able to instantly access the damaged mushrooms. Because there are times when a mushroom is damaged, and during the game, so it'll automatically be put into a list. However, if that mushroom is killed before I die, that mushroom's pointer or that mushroom's location is still in this list. And I just found it just so much easier to use a vector instead of a list to get rid of those locations because I can just like null like zero out that destroyed mushroom's location, and in sort I'll actually create a list using pushbacks. And the wave control, the wave manager, um, as I said, it parses through everything, and once again here is the directions.txt. And it monitors the game and triggers appropriate events. That's through all the spawners. They're really self-explanatory, so if you really need to see how I did it, you can just look at they're really quite simple. I'm pretty sure most people did it like this. The text display, it's utilizing your flyweight class fonts right here. I'm not sure if I actually implemented it using them properly, but it does work as far as I can tell. And the high scores, once again, do utilize the text file, and it updates through callbacks. Yeah, I think that is it for the sprint. Hopefully, that was concise as possible. I tried. Thank you.